Hey, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're prying open a leader's toolkit, but this one's a little different. It's not just about management tricks, it's about a system for building real, genuine connection and inspiration. So let's dive right in.
We're starting with this quote from James Humes because it just cuts right to the heart of everything we're talking about today. It's this idea that leadership, it isn't really about your title or how much authority you have. True leadership, as we're about to see, is built on a foundation of really, really good communication.
And everything we're getting into comes directly from Chapter 20 of Scott Howard Swain's book, A Practical Empath, Rewire Your Mind. What's so interesting is that the chapter on leadership comes at the very end. The author sees it as a capstone skill, something you can only really master after you've built up all the other empathetic practices first.
So let's start with the absolute bedrock of this entire approach. It's a method that the book calls the PEP system.
PEP stands for Practical Empathy Practice, and it's actually a pretty simple but really powerful three-step method for how we communicate. First, you start with just pure observation. What is happening without any judgment? Next, you check in with your own feelings, and then you take an educated guess at what the other person might be feeling. And finally, you try to figure out the core values or needs that are driving the whole situation. This simple loop, it's the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about.
Okay, so where do you even begin to apply PEP? Well, according to the book, you have to start with yourself. So Section 2 is all about mastering your own inner state. That's the internal toolkit you've got to have sorted out before you can even think about leading other people effectively.
And this internal compass has three main settings, right? First, it's that ability to shift yourself from anger to a place of peace, which lets you make rational calls. Second is learning to use your intuition, balancing trust in people with a little bit of healthy skepticism. And this last one is a big one, having empathy, even for your adversaries. Now, this doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It just means you understand where they're coming from so you can stay stable. At the end of the day, your internal balance is what dictates how effective you are on the outside.
All right, so now that we've talked about the internal work, let's switch gears and look at the external tools. This is Section 3, the Empathetic Communication Toolkit. These are the actual actionable skills you're going to use to connect with your team.
And just look at these tools. Be and sound natural is all about being authentic. People follow leaders they actually trust and understand. Then you've got debate and negotiation, which is so key for explaining your decisions and getting past that whole "because I said so" trap. And business environment acumen, that's about remembering that leadership comes with a very real responsibility for a company's success and for the people who work there. It's a pretty powerful set of tools.
Okay, theory is great, but let's see how this stuff actually works in the real world. Section 4 is all about empathic leadership in action. We're going to peek at a couple of conversation examples pulled straight from the book to see this toolkit really get put to the test.
So here's a great example of a leader getting empathy. Bob is clearly frustrated. His team just won't get on the same page. Now notice what his coach Jane does. She doesn't offer a solution or tell him what to do. She uses PEP. She just guesses his feeling, overwhelmed, and his need, unity. And when he complains about fragile egos, she reframes it as him valuing their growth. It's brilliant. She helps Bob find his own way forward without ever giving him direct advice.
Now let's flip it and see a leader giving empathy. His team member Emily is feeling incompetent because of new software. Instead of brushing it off, her leader David uses PEEP to connect. He guesses she's feeling overwhelmed and annoyed. Just by validating that frustration, he builds trust. And because of that trust, she's now open to his idea for more training. See, the empathy didn't fix the software, but it opened the door to the solution.
Okay, let's move on to what might be the ultimate test of this whole system. Section 5, Debate. How in the world do you use empathy when you fundamentally disagree with someone?
The book lays out two ways to argue. On one hand, you have the straw man. You've seen this everywhere. It's when you misrepresent someone's argument just so it's easier to knock down. But PEP pushes for the exact opposite, the steel man. This is where you actually present the best, strongest possible version of your opponent's argument before you even respond. It shows respect, and it signals you're actually interested in the truth, not just scoring points.
So, the PEP method for a debate is a three-step process.
First, you have to genuinely work to understand their side of things. Second, you acknowledge the feelings that are probably fueling their position. And third, you actively hunt for common ground, some shared value you can build on. In short, you're not looking for weak points to attack, you're listening for strong points you can connect with.
And this right here is the big payoff. Using PEP in a debate does something pretty incredible. It completely humanizes your opponent. It takes the conversation off the battleground, where everyone's got their shields up, and moves it into this space of respectful, collaborative problem-solving. You stop talking at each other, and you start exploring the issue together.
So as we wrap up, we've covered the PEP system, we've looked at the internal and the external tools that leaders need, and we've seen how to apply it in real conversations, even in a debate. Which brings us to one last question for you to think about. Which tool from this PEP leadership kit are you going to try to use first?